but now the word has meaning to me because we do reconstruct things. And that is what this group of community is. It is not taking the Ashkenazi Jewish version from Germany that escaped. It is not taking our Russian family. It is an evolving, which means it's always in motion, branch of Judaism for America.
Yeah, can I just highlight that?
Yeah, please.
So I think there's a really big diversity of Jewish life in America compared to many other countries. And the founder of Reconstructionism is a man who himself was part of the branch that was known as conservative Judaism. On the sort of spectrum of observance, it's kind of in the middle. And he felt very strongly, and this is what I want to underscore what Phyllis said, that we should not reject the majority culture of America, but we should infuse Judaism with American values. And that there's this interplay, and that there's this interplay between American, let's say, ideals, the best of America, right? We don't always live up to it, but the best of American ideals of democracy and equality and all of that.
You know, like all men are created equal,
Right.
I believe was the first draft.
Right. So, and that we should infuse that, and there should be the interplay between these American ideals and the more traditional aspects of Judaism. And so really sort of digging in. It is really interesting because when I've traveled the world, I have gone to synagogues in other countries, and you definitely see people who are more traditional. And I think what this synagogue does very well is it combines the traditional. You see, we still use a lot of Hebrew, for example. Most of us don't understand what every word means, but it's part of the heritage. So we combine the traditional with that greater, fuller understanding of the civilization we live in. So that's a great question.
Yeah, because I think the impression is that tradition is a significant part. So it's often when you talk about Judaism, it's almost like talked about like a culture rather than a religion.
The phrase is, tradition has a voice, not a veto.
Yeah, and I think that is actually the best encapsulation. I don't know how many Reconstructionist congregations there are in the United States, but they are, even though it's small, they are in many, I would say, major metropolitan areas, right, where there are large Jewish populations, and people are looking for something that recalls for them the traditions of their childhood, but offers them a different way about speaking about things. And I think Rabbi Shira's discussion today, I mean, I don't think we've ever spoken about conversion and proselytizing ever before, but it's a good example of how Reconstructionism welcomes that debate, right?
Yes. So she did not, wow, I'm not used to having people, you know, okay.
Also, if anyone wants to be off the record, because
Oh, it's fine.
just say so, and then we'll make sure. Yeah.
So you could see we didn't get a lecture from her. It was not a sermon from the mount, no pun intended, from upon high. You'll notice we even have stairs that go up here. Where I grew up, I couldn't even see the rabbi and the cantor. They were so tall and so far apart. So,
Did you grow up in Orthodox?
sorry, that's my story to tell. So that we're supporting these folks today.
Right, I'm sorry.
No problem. So yes, a voice, not a veto, would be valid. And she interacted with us rather than talking down to us. And that's very Reconstructionist. Oh gosh, we've got Shanna here, so now we get she may want to be off the record because she is the president, current president. So come on over. But
You were about to ask?
I was about to ask about female rabbis.
Yes.
How many do you have? Is it only in Reconstructionist or?
Well, this is a very interesting question. So there are, in In three of the so the Jewish denominations are, at least in America, are Orthodox, Conservative, Reconstructionist, and Reform. There are other movements too, but they're even smaller. In all of what's called the liberal movements, Conservative, Reform, and Reconstructionist, women are rabbis, and you will find many, many women rabbis. In Orthodox Judaism, there has been a movement, and Orthodox itself has all different permutations, but there has been a movement even in Orthodox Judaism to allow women not quite to be rabbis, but to take on prayer leading and spiritual and pastoral duties. So that's starting, but it's, I think at this point in most of what I would call liberal Judaism in America, there are many, many women rabbis leading congregations.
And Reconstructionism was the first group to be mitzvah girls, so the tradition that boys, you may have heard of, that was made available to young women in the middle of the previous century. Women were becoming rabbis. Rabbis had choices around intermarriage,
Gay marriage,
GLBTQ, before we even knew that had initials.
right?
So there certainly, and even, I think one of the sweetest differences, just a little one, is we're not called Adat Shalom Synagogue, because the word synagogue is about a building. We're called Adat Shalom Reconstructionist Congregation, which means we're a community that exists here Saturday morning, but I could find these two on the streets or at some lecture or doing something, and wherever we are connected. So that includes political things as well.
It's just a more broad question. I mean, how does Reconstructionist Judaism approach politics in the U.S.? Let's say domestic issues like abortion, LGBTQ.
So that's a really interesting, I should probably let Shauna talk about this. So politics in terms of partisan politics, meaning like Democrats versus Republicans, in order to maintain our tax exempt status, because religious institutions get exemption from federal taxes, we cannot be partisan. So we can't say represent one candidate over another. That said, most Reconstructionists, as you can hear us talking about things like LGBTQ and women being rabbis, are what would be considered politically liberal in the United States. And we do actually have both long-standing traditions about some of those controversial issues like abortion, but we have also developed synagogue positions through our community on other issues like gun control or the environment, right? So we can look back to traditional texts, and 2 weeks ago we had National Reproductive Rights Shabbat, which was part of a larger movement. And many people in the Jewish community, even in the Orthodox Jewish community, look to traditional texts to say that in traditional Judaism, the life of the mother, the living person, it's called Patuach HaNefesh, that you're supposed to save the soul of the body of the living person. So on issues like abortion, the Jewish community tends to be much more pro women's reproductive rights and bodily autonomy, not unilaterally. On issues, there are other issues, and part of Adat Shalom and part of reconstructing Judaism is the idea that you arrive at decisions through, I want to call it consensus, but it's more like battling out and learning and studying together and then arguing. So the community has at times come out with strong statements about particular issues or done work in the political process, not on a partisan basis, but for an issue, like gun control. This organization, our synagogue, very strongly supports gun control measures. And I should let Shauna add on.